I think I've always been interested in race. I don't know if there's any one particular moment that really sparked my interest, but I do remember learning about Dr. King and the civil rights movement. And I remember learning about that from a young age, so maybe that was it. But I think another big part of it was really how my parents raised me, especially my mother. I've always been raised from a young age, taught to believe that violence is the last possible answer, or violence is not the answer. So I've always been raised with that non-violent philosophy in mind. And so being raised on that belief, I've grown to admire figures like Dr. King or John Lewis or Bryan Stevenson. And the more I learned about them and the more that they became role models and figures for me, the more I learned about what they did, what they really did, their nuanced stories, and how what they fought against is, really still around today. And so I think that's what's really gotten me interested in race-related issues. And one of the race-related issues that's always interested me is diversity. Diversity is, since I've been from a young age, for me, diversity has always been seen as this normal or good thing. Diversity has always been praised, especially by, the media, arts, for artists. It's always been seen as a good thing for politicians, certain political groups. It's always been seen as a good thing for colleges. And just overall, it's been seen as a good thing. But is it? I've always been able to notice, not always, but as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more interested in these things, I've always noticed when there's a bunch of white people walking around and no people of color, or if I come into if I'm driving down the city with my dad, we drive into a Latino neighborhood or a black neighborhood, and I'll notice that there's really only one race of people walking around, and that's always interested me as to why that is and how that affects people. And so what I want to ask is how important is diversity? Is diversity, especially racial diversity, a good thing, or is it really just another political tool? And that's really what I hope to ask her and try to at least figure out with this. Hey, Anya.
Hi. Good, how are you?
Good. So what's your full name?
Anya Leptic.
Okay. And you are
I'm a senior at New Trier.
Okay. What are your thoughts on New Trier? Just general, any kind of thoughts that you have?
I actually really like it here. I know a couple people who don't like it here because it's so big. Yeah, it's, I really do like it. I think the teachers are really nice here. I think they're really open and accepting of most people. I don't want to say most people, like all people.
What do you think like a normal high school experience is like here at New Trier?
I gotta say the workload.
It's very challenging to stay on top of things. Teachers expect a lot of you. You're expected to take advantage of a lot of opportunities, and a lot of people do, so that's really cool. Generally, people are in clubs.
Getting involved in like a few clubs. Like a lot of people get involved in a lot of clubs. I personally only got involved in one or two, like my entire experience here.
They're in sports, they're in really cool classes, you get to choose things. So generally, I think people are in classes, at least one class that they're interested in.
I like to study computers, and I'm majoring in computer engineering in college. So I've had more math and science courses than history courses.
I did the New Trier math program, which is an accelerated math program, so I'm in really difficult math classes.
Which is kind of weird schedule-wise. Yeah, because I'm doubling up on history this year, and I've had none the past 2 years.
So do you think that you've had a normal high school experience?
It's a range of normal. It's a type of normal. I mean, I think everybody has a little bit different experience.
Here, yeah, I would say it was fairly normal. I guess relative to the average person, I've taken like decently pretty hard classes. I was in like 4 APs last year and 4 APs this year. So last year, pretty much my main focus was do well in school. A normal high school experience at New Trier, I would say, is one where you are really exposed to a lot of great people, a diversity of people. Obviously, New Trier is a pretty large school, so there's a huge array of different students, from athletically brilliant to obviously very intelligent academically, to like those who progress in theater and the arts and stuff. So you're going to be exposed to an array of very high achieving, very motivated kids. But then obviously the vast majority tend to fall within the average. So you'll be exposed to just kids who've had experiences, generally like fairly similar experiences growing up in the North Shore. They haven't really been exposed to much hardship. They've lived fairly comfortable lives. Their socioeconomic status is not something they particularly have to worry about. So yeah, overall, you're exposed to sort of a homogenous group.
So when I look around New Trier, most people look like me. And I never really noticed that until I joined groups like Student Voices and Equity and started talking to different people, because if everyone looks like you don't have to think about it.
New Trier, I don't think is the most diverse environment. Yeah, and especially where I live, Glencoe, it's all Caucasians, like half Jewish community. So it's strange because I was in Chinese, like Mandarin, my freshman and sophomore years, and like a solid like a third of the class is Asian or Chinese. And that's really weird because when I go around in my day, I don't see very many Asian or Chinese or other minorities.
You know, sometimes I'll be walking down the hall and I'll see someone that looks a little different and be like, oh, right, like New Trier is not very racially diverse.
Generally, like everyone in New Trier is white. They're the vast majority here. And throughout my life, I've generally interacted with white people only at school because that's been the predominant race at where I've gone to school.
So there's definitely things that I don't think about as a white person at New Trier that people of color at New Trier might have to think might have to think about. So like I never have to think about being in like Black and Brown Club is somewhere where people can go and talk about racial issues. I've never been, but I don't have to think about there being a special place where I can express my racial identity, because that's everywhere at New Trier.
So admittedly, I come from a very undiverse part of the world. The school that I go to is primarily white. The town I live in is primarily white. So it became pretty clear to me pretty fast that if I wanted to have a fair discussion, a fair conversation about race and about diversity, I would have to go to a place that was a little more diverse than where I currently live. Okay. How you doing, Laura?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You are a senior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got you. And are you, what ethnicity are you?
I am Hispanic. I'm Colombian and Puerto Rican.
So you go to Shy Arts, right? Okay. What are your thoughts on Shy Arts?
Well, I feel like it's a place where individuality and freedom is celebrated, and the fact that since all of us have to have majors in the arts, it kind of shows already that each person's going to have their own personality, and that we don't have any uniforms or anything, or there's nothing really that strict about the school, because the whole point of the school is freedom of expression and all that stuff.
Shy Arts is very, very diverse. It's a great school, not just diverse in aspects of like race and ethnicity, but diverse in the things that everyone loves to do and the art that we're allowed to express and share and make. I think that our ideas are never hindered, and they're never stopped and said, no, we can't say this or we can't do this.
And why I think that's so special is because not a lot of students get that opportunity to dive into art at all, like whether it's a lack of funding or just simply a lack of knowledge of what's out there. A lot of Chicago students can be artistically inclined, but they don't have those resources to back that up.
The blessing to be able to perform on the stages, to be in the shows there, to watch my friends be in the shows there, to go to school with people that like you see them in the halls and you're their best friend or whatever, but then you see them on stage and they're like a whole another person, and that's an opportunity that not a lot of people have or get to have.
And we're all about community. We're all about inclusiveness and making sure everyone's understood and understands others.
If you get raised in like a really close family type atmosphere, when you go to high school, you develop that family.
Here's a group of people that I'm working with, that I have class with, that I have to get this grade with, and bada boom, bada bang, I just make friends with them, or you learn to grow with them, or you learn to, respect them, but they're just an acquaintance, or they're just your colleague. It's a smaller reflection of what's out there, because we have a very ethnically diverse group population at Shy Arts, specifically with the student population.
When I think of Shy Arts, I think of diversity. First thing that comes to mind, honestly.
What do you think is a normal high school experience at Shy Arts?
At Shy Arts,
Well, I don't think Shy Arts is the typical high school. First, it's a very long day that the students have to be there. Like the students are there from 8 to 5. They have an 8 to 2 a rigorous academic program, and then they have the conservatory practice that is also very rigorous.
So from 8 to 2, we have our academic day, and then from 2 to 5 is our conservatory. Now, conservatories range from theater to music, creative writing, dance, and visual arts.
Would you say you've had a normal high school experience?
no, I don't. Well, I wouldn't say that.
How so?
Because I feel like the normal high school experience in general is supposed to be like a school where there's like sports and like, there's more of a focus on academics.
It's not like we don't have prom, or we don't have homecoming or spring formals or anything like that. We definitely don't have sports though, so that's I guess it's a trade-off from the arts side of it.
They complain sometimes that they don't have, like, for example, sports. They have very nice physical education classes, right? That they dance, that they do salsa, and they have, they try to kind of do more kind of creative stuff. But they have dodgeball, which I love. But kind of like teams stuff, that's not necessary Shy Arts.
A lot of my friends I would not have known, not just even going to Shy Arts, I wouldn't have known them ever, or people like them who were interested in the arts, because in my school, the thing that was mainly pushed, my elementary school, was basketball, sports. That's what was pushed. That's the career you should go in, and that was it. Our arts classes were very short, very small. We would just color, and that's not just art,
So both New Trier and Shy Arts are really good schools. They've got great programs, but they're different in their own ways. New Trier has its arts programs, but it really does excel in the academics. And Shy Arts has its academic programs, but it really does excel with the arts. The biggest difference I've noticed, though, really is the student population, especially when it comes to race. You know, both schools are very different when it comes to the racial diversity of their student population. But, you know, what is the impact of that? You know, how does that really impact the kids' lives? You know, what does that mean for them?
I don't know. It's been interesting. I mean, at times it can be hard because there are not a lot of people like me, and you know, it's kind of hard to relate in different situations. And but you know, it's all right. It's not terrible.
When you're exposed to a homogenous group of people, you've only been exposed to a very similar set of values and experiences. So for that reason, throughout my life, it's been pretty similar. I haven't really been exposed to those experiences and values of people from poorer backgrounds, people from predominantly African American backgrounds or Asian backgrounds.
I'm the only Chinese person in my immediate friend group that I've had since kindergarten.
Really?
Yeah.
Like my friendships, I haven't had an opportunity to meet as many people of color, which isn't, I mean, my friends are my friends, and if they're white, you know, they're still my friends, and if they're people of color, they're my friends, because everyone's different. But I really have to think about sometimes what voices I'm not hearing, because, you know, an academic environment should have tons of different opinions and different things, different experiences. And we don't get voices from different socioeconomic backgrounds, especially here.
It's been an environment where I could excel because of teachers, staff, and resources available. Obviously, the primary driver behind all of that is money. So because we have money, we're able to do a ton.
When I was younger, I had this perception like, oh, everything's great, everything's good. People, you know, everyone has the same educational opportunities as I do. I believed that when I was younger because I was getting these amazing, you know, elementary school. I was getting differential education, and I knew I had people to talk to if I was having a hard time, and I knew that, you know, my school lunch would be healthy for me.
I had friends even now in Shy Arts who were in the same conservatory as me, and it's like, I've never seen a show, you know? And it's like, really? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, well, you know, well, then come with me. Like, I want to, you know, come with me and see a show. You know what I mean? Like, it's real, and it sucks. Because even though we all go to the same school, we're still not afforded the same opportunities. And it's not because of Shy Arts, it's because of the world, and that's just how it is.
They are doing the best they can. The school is very young. I think they have been able to provide as many different resources.
I'm in shows doing theaters, and that's a blessing for me because I love that work. But there are a lot of us who are very unfortunate. You know, we go to a school with a bunch of different kids from all financial backgrounds.
We have representation of all the 50 wards of Chicago. So we have students from every part, you know, literally. So I have students that actually their grandmothers, they live around here.
Growing up in the suburbs, there has always been this kind of stereotype of each race. And when you're little, you kind of don't really understand. Then you grow up, you kind of get used to that. And going to Shy Arts, it kind of made me see differently.
It sort of brought me to this realization that, well, again, there are more than just 5 black people in the entire world, because that's who I went to school with, was a predominantly white student population, and I think 5 or 6 black people, and no one else of any background. Freshman year was probably the most intimidating, but not like nerve-wracking. Not at all. I didn't have this huge fear in my soul or my gut. I wasn't overwhelmed so drastically that I had to have counseling or whatever it was. I just like, oh, you know, I am the only white person. You know, this is kind of funny.
Definitely nothing wrong with an area being just one race, but I feel like Chicago is one of the most segregated cities. You know what I mean? And coming from an area where it was predominantly one race, you know, it was a whole new mindset, I I think, you know, I barely went out in my neighborhood because it was a very dangerous neighborhood, and it was not just because it was predominantly black. It was a very unsafe environment, and that had nothing to do with the people because they were people of color or anything like that. It was just a very dangerous area to live in. So going to Chi Arts was like a sanctuary for me almost, because it's like, wow, like these kids from all over that I can still relate to regardless of whether they're white or not or whatever they are, you know, like I can relate to them, unlike some of the other kids at my elementary school who I couldn't relate to, but that had nothing to do with, you know, we were all afforded different opportunities. I got an opportunity to go to Chi Arts, you know what I mean? And I think that changed me as a person. I could be doing a whole nother thing right now. My life could be so different if I had stayed over where I was, you know? So I think that Chi Arts in a way really kind of saved me in that aspect.
How do you think living in the environment that you live in has impacted your education?
My education. Well, I don't really think it's been the environment. I think it's been my parents that influenced my education.
I don't think it's necessarily impacted my education in the sense of like what I learn, but how I learn.
My mom, when I was younger, about 11, she was like, I'm gonna take you to every kind of church. You choose what you want, you know? So, you know, she would take me to a Buddhist church, she took me to a Christian, a Catholic church, you know, a very Christian church and all kinds of different things so that I could see what I wanted to believe in. She didn't want to influence me. She wanted to be like, there's all these options. Different people take these the way they want to. Other people don't respect them, but you're going to respect them because you're just going to go and just see which one you agree with.
For example, you know, the teacher sort of assigns the class to do this year-long project or whatever it is, and you work with two people who have never worked with before, and so you sort of learn how to deal with what they like to do or how hard they like to work or you know, what sort of person they are to work with. And you know, that has sort of made me realize, okay, you know, I can adjust myself.
My best friend, for example, she is the most difficult human being I've ever met. But I love her, and I had to get used to the way she is so that I could enjoy the good things about her. She has to switch things up so that she's okay to be around me and that we're friends. We both changed in order to mold together.
Attending Chi Arts, it kind of changed me as a person. Because before I was really quiet and kind of kept to myself, and I kind of acted more reserved, but I feel as if that going to a more diverse school, it kind of made me open up more about myself and my views on things, because before I was kind of afraid to speak out about how I feel because being the only black person in the room, you kind of have to reserve yourself in a way.
How do you think going to school in that diverse of an environment influences class discussions, or how does that affect class discussions?
Oh God.
Going to school in an environment that's not racially diverse, I don't know if it affects academic learning as much in certain classes, but there definitely is a missing voice in discussions, especially in English when we're reading books that take place in historical contexts where there are a lot of, you know, we can bring up themes of race, and when there's not a voice in the room that has experienced certain things, there's just a perspective that's missing.
In English, we're like reading all this literature about these kids, and I'm like, they look nothing like me, you know? So like, why would I be interested in reading about someone that's not like me? And which sounds kind of stupid, but like, I don't know. It's like I feel like we should learn more about, you know, black people or Mexican people or, you know, Asian people, but for the most part, it's European culture that we're learning about.
It's a disservice not to teach, like the works of authors that have contributed so much to this country. Even if it's not written in the curriculum.
The fact that we are given such license by the administration to try to encourage our students to think beyond the boundary lines of the North Shore has always been something I've been really proud of about working here in New Trier.
I guess here it's inherently biased towards like learning more about others, right? Because we're exposed to, generally in my English classes and history classes, we've read a lot of texts from African Americans. Last year there was W.E.B. Du Bois and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And through his text, I was really exposed to the struggles and how institutionalized racism has affected African Americans.
Going to Chi Arts for 4 years, we've seen a lot. You know, Trump being elected, a lot of innocent black people getting shot, police brutality. You know, all those videos and things that happened in real time. And like, I found out when I was at Chi Arts. So in my AP literature class, like, we talked about that stuff because it was important and it was happening now. And those were things that we were just like, you know, wow, this is the world that we live in. So how can we change it? In my integrated arts class, I'm a part of this group, and this group of it's a couple of kids from Chi Arts and then another group from another high school. And, you know, we came together and we're talking about like painting murals and things like that. And a friend in that other high school group had lost a friend due to gun violence. And she just started crying. And we were just there with her and for her because it's really, you know, there's different from seeing like things like that on TV, but then when you actually know somebody who lost someone that was actually close to them, it's just, it's really eye-opening, you know?
I think New Trier has done a good job of trying to introduce these a different perspective than what most of the kids at New Trier have experienced. But the one sort of limitation there is that I haven't actually interacted with those people in those backgrounds, and I think that kind of really hinders my complete understanding, because obviously interacting with someone is much more powerful than reading it in text and in theory.
I mean, I try not to pay attention to it, but like there will be certain times where I'm like, let's say in like history, for example, like last year in world history, we were talking about the slave trade, and I like looked up one time and like everybody, and not the teachers, but like all the students in the class were like looking at me like I was supposed to have some type of reaction to what he said, and I was, you know, that was like one of those times where I really realized I was like, dang, like I'm the only one in here.
So we lose perspective on certain things. By living in this environment, you have the option to not think about other environments. And if you don't want to put the work in, you don't have to think about other places.
I kind of just assume sometimes that like my little bubble is all it is, but it's really obviously not.
I've got like rose-tinted glasses on because of the wealth and the primarily Caucasian part of the school. So I guess I'm in like this sort of bubble where I think I don't want to think everywhere is like this, and I know like logically everywhere isn't like this, but I want to believe it is.
I'd like to think that the majority of our students are fairly hip to the idea that while we celebrate the diversity that exists at this institution, I think the majority of students recognize that it's still fairly limited here.
I mean, there's all these shocks that come like one year from the North Shore. A lot of, oh, I didn't know that was happening. Oh, I had no idea. Or, oh, that's a problem. I didn't realize how big of a problem that was.
You know, it's great and all that you have that sort of culture shock every once in a while, as long as you know how to respond to it.
It's made me more aware that I'm not the only thing in the world, that Hispanics are not the only thing that exists. Because a lot of people are surrounded, like you know how there's like neighborhoods that are like specific, like the Puerto Rican neighborhood and Greek town and all that stuff, and you know like where people are, quote unquote. But when it comes to me, I've been around so many different people that it was never a moment of like, it's just a Hispanic, it's everybody.
It's really good to get opinions from everyone, you know, again, setting color and race and things like that aside, like these people, we're all human. That's what we need to be focused on. Like that, it's helped shape me in so many ways, getting opinions from different people that live in completely different areas, you know? just hearing their sides of the story and their sides of things and how they feel about race and color and things like that, because it's different from my experiences.
I feel like you get used to other people, and that is easier for you to get used to other people, like everyone else that you meet outside of everything. Because if you get used to one person that isn't close to you and isn't someone you see every day, but you see them sometimes, it makes you be like, well, I'm used to their time. I can be used to theirs. Let's go somewhere else and see if I can be okay with that other person.
That's why I was fascinated when I came from Puerto Rico, here, to see that I can learn so much from my friends that were from Turkey and from Germany and from India and from Pakistan. And it was fascinating all the time, and I was completely mesmerized by all these concepts and ideas, and I felt like Chicago is open and raw there. You know what I mean? There is life there in just that one building.
You lose automatic perspective, I think, is a good way to put it. You lose the opportunity to easily and intuitively understand the perspectives of others and the experiences of others, because it's not easily accessible. But that's not something that we can't change.
I think my colleagues in the classroom do a pretty remarkable and amazing job. I'm thinking about the most recent seminar day we hosted about racial bias, and there was some pushback from some members of the community, and I could not have been more proud as a faculty member, and as just a member of the New Trier community, at the school board meeting that many of us attended to show support for those individuals who were creating that seminar day. From my standpoint, sort of like right there at the 50-yard line, so to speak, right, in the trenches, in the classroom, I've seen remarkable diversity in terms of how my classrooms have grown with regards to student dynamic and demographics. I'm Jewish, and when I started at New Trier, I could count perhaps on one hand the number of Jewish students I would have in a year, sometimes maybe one in all of my classes. In 15 plus years, that has fairly radically changed. I think that we have students not just of a Jewish culture and background here at the school, but from a far greater myriad of cultures and backgrounds than what I would have been exposed to in my classrooms, again, at the beginning of my career.
Do you think that your students lose or gain anything when they go to school?
I think that they gain a lot. We have students that come from very far places, and they come to school every day. Some of them have to take public transportation to get home, back and forward at 5 o'clock when it's dark, when it's cold, right? And they still make it work every day, And I don't think that's a typical student. They have to be, trained in a different kind of way. That resilience, that endurance, that the day that probably they're not going to wake up feeling okay. How do they keep moving? I was fascinated by here, you guys have 94% attendance and you come from so many different places. And we have students in here that, they have to walk 2 blocks and they don't want to get to school. There might be something extraordinary happening here. Why do you come to school every day? And I just realized it's so much to learn from people. They have so much to offer, because it's so, every, corner there's so much that you can that they can bring to the table. Like, you know, they can offer. That is, of course, you don't want to miss it. The more that we embrace learning about different people, right? I think we get better chances to be happier, you know. I think it's that. That might be the magic, I think, you know.
I guess one of the reasons why I'm really doing this is because it helps keep me connected to the world outside. You know, I think New Trier does a great job of educating people about systematic racism and the civil rights movement. We had an entire day this year and last year dedicated to learning about that kind of stuff. But I think it could be doing more, and I think this community could be doing more. Because we do live in a really white community, and it has been getting better. You know, I've definitely noticed in the 4 years since I've been at New Trier that there has been an increase in the diversity of people and the increase in the diversity of education, you know, in terms of teaching people about systematic racism and the civil rights movement. But again, I think we could be doing more. Because even though we have a lot of books, and a lot of videos, and a lot of news articles to learn from, we still don't have that many people to learn from. Because what I've learned through this is that, you know, no matter how good you write the book, no matter how good you edit the video, no matter how good the research for your article is, it is never going to be as educational, and you are never going to learn from it as much as you are from people. And I think that if not just here in the North Shore, if not just at Shy Arts, but you know, everywhere, really allowed people to learn from each other and really allowed that kind of diversity to grow and flourish, I think we would be on the right track towards a much better society. And what I hope this documentary does, I guess, is, you know, help us start getting on that right track.